Hello, everybody. It's your boy Renny, about to be joined by your other boy Kenny. Together, we're Kenny and Renny. Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. You may have just seen me on national television, the national media on national television, and you're going to see Kenny right away in just a little bit. But look at the Winnipeg Jets bounce back. I do want to welcome back all the, as my wife would refer to them, sucky boo-boos out there who couldn't bear to show up after the Winnipeg Jets lost their first game of the season. And we're our audience was like half what it typically was because of the sucky boo-boos out there who are too afraid to talk about losses or can't bear to talk about it. Anyways, welcome back. The bandwagon's here. You can hop back on. It's good to see you again. Hopefully you had a nice day off there the other day. Back in time to see the Winnipeg Jets just kind of pick up where they left off. Really good bounce back game for the Winnipeg Jets. Kind of exactly what you'd expect against I would say the Red Wings were a bit of a defensively deficient team. I think the exact kind of team that the Winnipeg Jets make a little bit of an example of. I thought that may be what happened tonight. Just give me 1 second. My apologies, folks. I'm trying to get in here as quick as I can. It's interesting. Someone had just reached out to me on my walk home from the hotel regarding a theory that I'd put forth earlier on in this program, earlier in the season, a theory that I've got receipts. You can go back and look at it. But what I've said about this Winnipeg Jets team is that when they score or get scored on first, usually what they'll do is they'll just turn the game into a defensive grind and just kind of really slow things down for the other team and grind until they get their goal. And now all of a sudden it's tied. Then they get the next one. They're up 2-1. Maybe they win 3-1, 3-2. But we've seen a whole bunch of these games. And basically there's kind of two different kinds of games that the Winnipeg Jets play, or two different kind of wins anyways. The only outlier in my mind is the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins, where the Jets fall down by 2 and end up hanging 6 goals on the Pittsburgh Penguins in that case. But this is just another one of those games. If the Winnipeg Jets score first, look out, because if they do, I don't know if it's just their momentum. I think that has a lot to do with it. I don't know if it's just that the other team starts opening up. I think tonight's game isn't a good example of that, because it just would have been too early for them to. I just think this is a night where the Winnipeg Jets started out that game, and the Winnipeg Jets top line specifically, that probably had a healthy dose of watching Kenny and Renny after the last show and heard from the audience out there and heard from so many Winnipeggers wanting to crack that line apart, take it apart with the big statement being said, and a statement with facts backing it up, that they were not necessarily the best 5-on-5 line. So they go out on this night and in the third period establish, kind of beyond a shadow of a doubt in this game, that they were the best 5-on-5 line in this game. Kyle Connor, with his 500th point, scores a goal right away after that. He's all over it. It's too bad all you sucky boo-boos missed the show last time, because we kind of ended with a really interesting conversation between myself and Ken about Kyle Connor and his shot this year and something seeing different. Well, if you watched the program, you may have picked up that we addressed it. Ken said, "You've got homework to do." He said to me, we went out and we did that homework, and it was great stuff that we got. Basically what we'll get into that a little bit in the show. What we see from this tonight is the Winnipeg Jets 9-1, absolutely handing it to teams that aren't willing to commit to the defensive side of things. Kyle Connor getting to the front of the net for his goal, going past the best defenseman on the Detroit Red Wings and making it look easy. Moritz Seider either not expecting the speed coming from Kyle Connor or getting stuck in no man's land. I don't necessarily know what happened there. The hockey gods continue to love the Winnipeg Jets with a very, very key goal that goes in for them. One of the many bounces. We should say this. Got to be good to be lucky to be good. The Winnipeg Jets have been very good and very lucky to start this season. That's a very key goal in this game that goes in their direction. Regardless, I'm not trying to say for a second that that's why this is the outcome of this game. I thought Detroit Red Wings were the kind of team that the Winnipeg Jets would pick apart. I feel they picked them apart on this night. Maybe there was a little bit of momentum in some of those power play goals. Maybe there's a little frustration in some of the nitpicking audience who are looking to find something wrong with everything that happens with the Winnipeg Jets, and they're frustrated that the power play, the penalty kill allowed 2 goals on this night. But regardless of that, here, let's put it this way. Regardless, if the Jets get buoyed by that Nino Niederreiter goal that gets pretty lucky and goes into the back of the net, which the Winnipeg Jets would admit to you, if the shoe were on the other foot, I think the Winnipeg Jets fight their way back in that game because they're not the kind of team that's going to be broken by one lucky puck. Whereas in this case, whether the Detroit Red Wings were broken or whether the Winnipeg Jets just kept pushing after that, I like what I saw from them after that point. They were the better team in the third period when they needed to be. I think that this game, regardless of the lucky bounce, would have ended up being a win for the Winnipeg Jets, as I just don't think they left any shadow of a doubt who was the best team in the third period. And that's when the Detroit Red Wings, if they were going to win that game, needed to be that. It's as simple as that. You hear Scott Arniel talk about it time and time again. He talked about it that last game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. He's just so often going in and saying, we need to be the better team this period. And quite often, if you are the team that your coach can challenge you to come out and do something in those 20 minutes and you do it, that's enough to be the team that wins on a night like tonight. They probably had more than enough to win. But what I do like is the Jets left no shadow of a doubt who is the better team on this night. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business for his take on the whole thing. Here comes Kenny, everybody. Kenny, you don't know how long I've been waiting for this. You've got to go out there and be the Vittorio Rossi man. That's for so long. Look at me. I'm Ken. I'm dressed like $1 million. I look like $1 million. Renny's sitting there. He looks like he's wearing sweatpants if he's wearing pants at all in his home studio. Well, the tables have turned, and now I'm the Vittorio Rossi man. I'm the guy who walked down and told Frankie and the boys, do me up, right? And they did. Love this tie. This is like an all-time.
Get it out of the way of the microphone there, would you?
Waiting to pull this out. It's got the little pink flowers in on the blue tie. Great suit. I felt like I looked like $1 million on it, even if I was taking some heat for wearing glasses on the night here, but not even what is it called? Shoppers Drug Mart readers could detract from how good I looked in the Frankie and the boys suit there by Vittorio Rossi. So you know what to do, folks. If you want to look good, even if you've got a pair of $2 monocles on your face, which is very close to what I had on this night, all you got to do is head on down to Vittorio Rossi. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you upright. Ken, you must have saw all the stuff you needed to see from at home on your couch there tonight watching this game. What do you take away from that Jets victory on this night? Back in the win column, and boy, oh boy, 9-1 in the first 10 games of the season.
Yeah, it's an impressive start in the 10-game block. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, the Jets were looking for a response after a lackluster effort on Monday against the Leafs. And as you mentioned, our audience at about half of its usual pace out of the gate, but good to see people are back today. That's
welcome back. Yeah, good to see
them to be back in the saddle here, and we appreciate it. Always prefer to be in the building, but different vantage point. Mike McIntyre, my colleague from the Free Press, handling things inside the building and asking post-game questions along with you. Impressive effort. Top line needed a response, much like several other, the entire team needed a response. Top line doing a nice job scoring 3 5-on-5 goals. They still have some work to do in terms of getting the ledger to even, but I would say that 9-5 looks a lot better than 9-2 did going into the game. And, Scott Arniel shut down any thought of breaking up this line. And Sean, we've seen this before. I mean, both of us were asked on various platforms if we thought there'd be, some lineup changes or line changes or anything else. And, at least I said to Jim Toth the other day, to me, this was much like during the Rick Bowness era. When a team gets smoked, Sean, Rick Bowness liked to give them a chance to respond, and Scott or Neal went with the same direct path this evening. I thought we might see Hayden Fleury on that third pairing, but Logan Stanley had another turn on the third pairing with Colin Miller. But yeah, top line was great. Kyle Connor, monumental milestone night for him in his home state. Good on him for saying at the morning skate that it was it is a special place for him to play. Sean, we've covered a lot of I've covered a lot of games in that building. I know you got your first taste of the
yeah.
Caesars Arena, and I'm going to ask you about that in a second. But I'm glad that Kyle kind of let you behind the curtain a little bit this morning, and it wasn't just another game for him. It was friends and family in attendance, and it was a big night for him. But I think he became the fastest to 500 points for sure in Jets Point 2.0. So, and that's pretty elite company. 541 games for 500 points, and for Kyle, that's a very good milestone. And Sean, I mean, we would both agree that it seems like he's just getting started on a lot of levels. And we'll dig into the quick release and all those things in a moment as well. But I thought that was impressive. And no surprise, the Jets, they give up 2 power play goals in the second period, and who's starting the third? The Adam Lowry line, and yes, of course, they're the beneficiaries of a big bounce. Nino with the one-handed effort that goes off the stick of Alex Lyon, and Ben Sherrod is looking for a man to cover, and the puck accidentally goes in off his skate. Just a tough break for the former Jet on that play all around, but they got the puck to the net, and for them in that situation, good things happen. The whole, old hockey cliche, you get the puck to the net. Sometimes there's a reward there. And Sean, like you talked about off the top, like Detroit, even though they had nothing generated at 5-on-5, literally 0 scoring chances in the second period, they get 2 power play goals, one really nice tip in from DeBrincat, and all of a sudden they're in the hockey game, in a game they probably didn't really have a whole lot of business being in. The Jets had tons of chances, Sean, you were there, to get it to 4-0. A couple posts, Alex Lyon made a couple of ridiculous saves, and suddenly the Jets are looking up, and a team that isn't as equipped to handle this maybe folds after they go through a scenario like that. Instead, they cranked it up a notch or two and found a way to get things turned around again in the third, and absolutely dominated the third period. So, impressive bounce back, which is, if you're Scott or Neal, and if you're every member of that Winnipeg Jets team, and you're unhappy with how things went on Monday night against the Leafs, you were expecting a response, and that's exactly what you got. So, impressive end to a 10-game block. We'll dig into the bigger picture stuff as well. But yeah, I mean, that's what you were expecting from the Jets in terms of a bounce back, and they delivered basically on every single front, against a team that really struggled in their own end. Sean, I mean, you touched on it. I mean, it was not a clinic, let's just say.
Yeah, I'll say this about Alex
side.
Lyon. What he may have taken away from the Jets on the front end of this game, he definitely gave back on the later end of that game. Didn't really help his team out that much. I mean, I say it like this. We talk all the time, and yes, I was thinking about this today. I know that there's going to be some throughout the season. There's going to be some KNR viewers who are frustrated with me because I'm that guy who's like maybe not enough, and I don't want to say enjoying because that's not what it's about. But like, for a lot of people, it's the road there. That is the beautiful thing, right? So there's Winnipeg Jets fans right now that out of like 9-1 can sit here and be, wow, this is just amazing. And remember that time the Winnipeg Jets started the season, one of the hottest starts the team's ever had in NHL history. Whereas I'm sitting here and all I can think of and look at is like, okay, well, let's dissect this. How many of these wins came against teams that were below the playoff line, teams probably below the playoff line teams this year? How is this going to translate to success at the end of the year and all those kind of things? So I don't know, but I think I lost where I was going with this. I guess I just know that a lot of times this season, what I do is I come away from a victory like this, and it's almost like the expectations for me are that I fully expect when the Winnipeg Jets play the Detroit Red Wings. The Detroit Red Wings seem to me, and Ken feel like I felt it in their dressing room today when I talked to their players. I just don't feel the commitment that exists within the Winnipeg Jets room, the focus, the belief, all those kind of things. They strike me as a team that is ready to break when things go wrong. And the one thing I'm not giving the Winnipeg Jets credit enough about, so I'll try to do it here, is every time I criticize the Winnipeg Jets, I'm criticizing them in a way where I'm basically saying the way this team plays, you should have an insane amount of belief in this team, right? So what I nitpick are things that other teams wish they were being nitpicked about. The Winnipeg Jets, to your point, Ken, are the kind of team that on a night like tonight, after those 2 goals, they may have broken. You know what I mean? The Winnipeg Jets don't break in situations like these. Other teams do. And that's why I guess on a night like tonight, I walk into it fully expecting a victory for the Winnipeg Jets, because I expect from the Jets that they break a team like this. And that is a valuable and an admirable trait in a hockey team, that they go out and they do things the right way and they break teams the way I thought they broke the Detroit Red Wings tonight.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously a team that, they're sort of becoming like they're in the same division as the Ottawa Senators, and they're in the same boat, right? We've been talking for the last couple of years. Well, when are the Buffalo Sabres, one of the Ottawa Senators, one of the Detroit Red Wings, they're going to knock on the door and break through and make the playoffs? Well, again, it's one night, but the Red Wings didn't look like a playoff team to me, Sean. And it's funny. Alex Lyon struggled in the third, no doubt, but he went into the game with a 940 save percentage and a 205 goals against average, which, is a credit to him in previous games, but also an example of the small sample size that we've been talking about throughout the entire 10-game block. So, yeah, of course it's an impressive start, but even Scott or Neal, responded to your question, Sean. He's got no interest in 500 hockey. Things are going to get tougher for them, which means the Jets have to get better as the season goes along, or else the 9-1 start is going to be nothing but a footnote. But I think what's important in the 9-1 start is that the Jets have taken care of business. They have, done a nice job of, getting through some of the wilderness, if you will. I mean, some of those non-playoff teams were playing well at the start of the year. Some of them have not. Some other teams play them hard. That's the way life goes. It's tough to, make broad sweeping assertions in the first 10 games, because the games 40 to 60 and 60 to 82 sometimes can be different for teams, and some teams that start really well hit their stride early and never sustain it, right? So what I liked about the Jets' effort is, Sean, I mean, we talked about it the entire game, right? The Jets' top line needed to be better at 5-on-5. They absolutely were. The Jets' second pairing of Neal Pionk and Dylan Samberg, they had a tough night. They were on for 5 even strength goals against. Pionk was on for one of the 6-on-5 goals, which, I think is technically an even strength goal. So we got a plus there in the game, but it was a tough goal for that pairing. Today, they were much more efficient in terms of how they moved the puck. Detroit's forecheck was not nearly as effective as Toronto's was, but at the same time, the Jets' second pairing showed the ability to move the puck more efficiently. And when they spent less time in their defensive zone, there were fewer breakdowns. Like, they did a good job of getting up ice, getting involved, getting the puck moved north. They did a better job of taking care of the front of the net. There were not a lot of, breakdowns like we saw in the 5 goals they were on for against the Maple Leafs. So that's impressive, right? Neal Pionk talked about it. I mean, again, started with a joke the same way Josh Morrissey did the other day when he said the Jets were going to do their best to be 82-0, but it was going to be tough to do. Pionk said the sun came up in the morning. I mean, that was important for their team, not getting too down on things. And, that's what you have to do, but you have to stack those games, right? That's the whole thing. You can't just do it one night and say, oh man, thank goodness, put that game behind you. But now the Jets will try to stack things. But I like the way their second pairing played today. Their top line obviously answered the bell. And because they, spread out the lead and the advantage, today is the first time in a long time that our chat room will not be buzzing about how Nikolai Ehlers had so much fewer, less ice time than Kyle Connor, because he actually out ice time to Kyle Connor today in a rare moment. Ehlers 17:05, Kyle Connor 16:18. So That's one storyline we won't get into today. But yeah, I mean, we're going to be talking about Kyle Connor a lot, Sean. I mean, you were there. Let's dig in a little further about let's go to the shooting with Kyle Connor, unless you have somewhere else you prefer to go.
I know exactly.
Let's go about
where
your
I
homework.
prefer
Let's
to
go to your homework.
I know where I
Oh.
prefer to go. Let's go where Wild Bill says, Renny, one word, headband. It's been called for, folks. Time to make it a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show. I'm going to tell you this, Ken. Sean's headband sounds a lot cooler than Sean's Shoppers Drug Mart readers. But
you would have really impressed him if you went with both, though. Right now, there's a couple people calling for it.
Well, I'm just going to ignore those and pretend that they didn't happen. And I'm going to go, Ken, and I'm going to tell you about this conversation I had with Kyle Connor, because I'm going to tell you this. Kyle Connor kind of gave Renny the pristine roofing wake-up call on this one here. And I got to say, so it's interesting because we went and like after the last show, you said, sounds like you've got homework to do. We went, we did our homework, and I thought it was fascinating. We did the numbers. I went and had a conversation with Kyle, and I thought, I asked him, have you changed your release this year? And he kind of
responded the way that I thought he would, didn't he?
Well, he looked and he kind of laughed and he said, no, why do you think I changed my release? And I was like, well, yeah, I kind of do. And I said, at the beginning, I thought it was that you had no follow through. But then I looked more in what I'm seeing from him. And this is really interesting, Ken, because if you're a goalie and you're trying to get tipped signs of where the player is going to go with the puck. One of the things is that a player will typically, you and I for sure, there's very few that wouldn't do this. We load the puck up, right? Like we drag the puck backwards where we can get a bigger shot, and you rip that shot, right? Austin Matthews still does it, and he does it really well, and he just shoots it so hard. It's hard for goalies, but there's different ways to skin a cat. And in this case, what I felt like I was seeing from Kyle Connor is that he's releasing the puck without loading it up at all, right? And it's just flying off his stick. And I think what it does is it's hard for the goaltender to pick up that the shot is coming, and by the time it is coming, they're like, oh, a little bit too late, and all of a sudden, bang, it's in the back of the net. But pristine roofing wake-up call, Kyle Connor tells me, says, I did not do anything. It's the same shot I've had for years, and that's just the way it is. And my response was, well, we went and we had a analytics service analyze your shot and your goals from last year. And what we've seen is that the puck is on your stick 35% less time this year in a league where fractions of seconds matter. He has shaved off 35% of the time off of his release. The puck is on his stick 35% less of the time before it's flying through the air and finding its way through the back of the net. Now, he contested that as well. He said, well, what's the scenario that we're talking about? Are we talking about just one-timers? Are we talking about certain different kind of things? And there's a point to be had with that. There's a point to be had. I think it's one of these things where regardless of what he's talking about, the scenario, Kyle Connor's finding a way to have the puck spend less time on his stick before his release. And I think it's doing very well. But regardless, even when making that statement, even when backing it up with the facts, Kyle Connor gave me the pristine roofing wake-up call. And you know what that means. It's time to give North End Rick the pristine roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your house to take a look at any of your roofing, siding, or exterior needs. He'll tell you exactly what you need. Or you can call Pristine Roofing themselves at 204-237-7663. I mean, I don't know who this Kyle Connor thinks he is, walking onto my show and giving me the pristine roofing wake-up call. But then I looked tonight and I checks into some stats and, sounds like he's a pretty good player. 500 points, does so in his hometown. The only player from Michigan ever to do it in front of friends and family, a proud, beaming mom on that night. Long way of me just getting into it and saying, what a night for Kyle Connor. But I just feel it's like this. This guy has put the cinder block on the gas pedal and is running the Camaro off a cliff right now. The way that he is playing, tied for the league lead in goals scored, he just keeps going. And the thing that I like about it, Ken, is it's not for the most part that he went out and had one of these nights where he goes and gets like 7 points and he's got 9 points in 7 games, but he actually only has points in 2 of the 7 games, right? Like Kyle Connor shows up, contributes every single night. It's consistent. It's audacious, not in its volume on one single night, but audacious in its consistency, which I think is far more important. Kyle Connor is the best version of Kyle Connor we've ever seen before right now in this moment.
Yeah, and it's not just the offensive exploits that we're seeing here, right, Sean? I mean, 17 points in 10 games is impressive enough. He's hanging around the league leaders, I think tied for the league lead in goals by the time the game ended. But it's what Scott Neal told you in his answer, Sean. It's in the third period when the Jets have a 3-goal lead. Kyle Connor is backtracking and lifting sticks and being the first man, the F3, the high forward back, and ensuring it's not an odd man rush, to snuff out any opportunity that the Red Wings are going to somehow mount a comeback, right? I mean, that's what's impressed me, right? And again, we saw this at points in the playoffs, but the fact that Kyle has carried this over into the season is so important for a team that wants to take the next step when it counts. And Scott Neal said it at the morning skate, Sean. Again, you were there. When you have the buy-in from the top line players, the rest of the team, I mean, usually it's the workers that set the table. And yes, in a lot of ways, the Lowry line still does that for the Jets. We know that. But when Kyle Connor is back checking like that, it sets, people take notice, and I think it's impressive. So, hey, there you go. Wow. My take was 50. Mal Paris says 60 for KFC. Never mind 50.
Well, honestly,
my take is tired and his is wired. There we go. 50 is what? You go ahead and say it. For a guy who's never had more than 47, 50 is not a good enough, bold enough prediction for you. I should have said 75.
That's exactly what I was going to say. 50 is a bold prediction, but it's not that bold, right? Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Like, hey, 50,
30 would be 50, not bold for Kyle Connor because he's auto 30.
No,
50 is still
30 would be like, Ken, contribute something to the show, please.
Exactly.
That's what 30 would be. 50 is like he's well on pace for over 50.
I said it before the year. I didn't say it when the year started.
Oh, for sure. I agree with it. I'm saying right now, him saying, who? Yeah, there we go. Malpre saying 60 for KFC. This is like, I love this bold take. I love it a lot.
It's certainly possible.
I also have to say, SK here says with a red hot take, 35% less time on the stick is insane. Imagine, this is the thing right here with SK. Imagine being one of the best snipers in hockey and improving that much. That's unfreaking real. This is the crazy thing, Ken, is Kyle Connor was already a freak of nature when it came to getting a quick shot off of his stick. And whatever he's doing, whether it's nothing or whether it's just happening, however, or whether he's maybe kind of hiding what's happening here, the results that he's getting right now, this is exactly it. This is such a hot take by SK that I actually have to say, I'm out of town right now, SK, and I know you usually live in Calgary, but I think you're in the backyard of my house right now in my Arctic Spas hot tub because your take is so hot. That's the only explanation for this, because we know there's no such thing as a cold take in an Arctic Spas hot tub, but there are red hot takes in an Arctic Spas hot tub. So you know what to do. If you're sick of the cold takes, get on down, see Dustin at Arctic Spas, ask him to hook you up with the Kenny and Renny deal. He'll take care of you, include the Spa Boy package, which is basically set it and forget it. if you want a hot tub that does everything just shy of being the hot tub time machine that Ken wants in all the time, you know what to do. Go on down to Arctic Spas and talk to our guy Dustin down there. Hey, let's pivot. We can come back to Kyle Connor later, but Neal Pionk.
We will. I'm just going to tell you, we're going to go back to Kyle Connor at some point, probably in about 20 minutes.
All the folks out there right now, I don't know if you saw my post-game interview with Neal Pionk. Last question I asked was the shortest answer, and it was extremely impactful. I liked it. I loved the way that interview ended because it was just like the dramatic pause afterwards. And it just, I thought it worked out well. But the backstory to this is right now the Winnipeg Jets have more points from defensemen than any other team in the NHL. And the other backstory is right now Neal Pionk is tied for second in scoring by a defenseman in the NHL. I asked him the question, basically, what it means to him that he is second in the NHL in scoring for a defenseman. And his response was brilliant. He said, it means I've got great teammates. I love that line, Ken. What do you take away from Neal Pionk, how he's playing, how he's producing right now, but also how he's handling producing the way he is?
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, what I would say, what Pionk is up to 12 points now, Sean, and we were talking about this during the game itself. Great teammates, yes, but Neal Pionk showed incredible hockey sense, leaving Alex DeBrincat in the dust after the one face-off by Mark Scheifele on his first goal on the of the game out of the two. Right, he made Alex DeBrincat think that he was just going to hang around the blue line after going to the half wall to Kyle Connor, and by the time DeBrincat forgot to shoulder check, Neal Pionk was by him, and Kyle Connor got it to the front of the net, and lo and behold, there is Neal Pionk banging home a rebound, and there is DeBrincat with the classic, oh my God, oh no, right? Like, it was one of those things, like, I know you saw it because they had a great viz of it, Sean. DeBrincat's face when he realized that Pionk had whipped by him, it was one of those, you knew you weren't catching him. And when you see the rebound kick out to him that way, as a forward, you're like, oh my, I had one job. My job was to have my head on a swivel and ensure the defenseman stays there. But he did not stay there, and he made you hang up a bad minus on the play there. So I loved his thinking. But Sean, to me, the most important part for Neal Pionk today had nothing to do with the two goals, even though the two goals are impressive. The important thing for Neal Pionk, after a night where he was on for 5 against, was to not have a chaotic day in the defensive zone. And he was very steady. He made sound decisions. I thought he played hard like he always does. And you saw the chemistry between Samberg and Pionk again, where the other night you saw wires crossed, and it just was one of those, it's a tough night. Neal Pionk said it in the post game also. Sometimes there are tough nights, and those guys wore one the other night, but they did exactly what they were asked to do. Go back and play a steady game. That's what they did defensively, and then the offense came, and it's impressive. I mean, right when Rick Bowness got there, absolute first avail of training camp, Sean, he wanted his defenseman to score, what was it, 40? He wanted the 40 goals from the defenseman. Wasn't that what he said? Something like that. Something along those lines. Yeah. RD are coming. Well, the defense are also coming this year. And right now, as Gary Galley pointed out on the broadcast, Jets leading the league in points. Like that's impressive from the back end. For all of the the heat they take for not being a star-studded blue line compared to some teams. That's an impressive start on the back end. And Neal Pionk had a really important bounce back game. And same for Dylan Samberg, who, again, it was a tough night for both those guys on Monday, but they bounced back really well. And Pionk producing the way that he has been is impressive. There's no other way to put it. I mean, here's a guy we wonder. I mean, he had playoff success at times, right, in terms of the offense. But this is the best he's played probably, since I think it was maybe his second year when he got here, when he was 30 plus points out of the gate. But it's been impressive, and he's on pace for career year. And guess what? He's in a contract year, so good timing for him.
I think Leighton Janis was just making fun of me because I talk about details so much lately. But I do think that's important. Like the play that you're talking about where Alex DeBrincat suddenly looks and the look on his face is like, oh man, he just blew by me. Like, those are the details that I'm talking about. When can you remember a player on the Winnipeg Jets getting caught on camera looking like that? Like that's what I mean by details. You want to know why? Because the player on the Winnipeg Jets knows that that guy is his man, and he's not getting lost watching the puck and then all of a sudden having a guy blow by. And we're talking about Alex DeBrincat, who's a great player in this league. But I'll tell you this right now, and I would say it pretty much for almost every person on that Detroit roster. Man to man to man for Winnipeg, their details are right. They're doing the right things over and over and over again, and they eat up teams that don't do the right thing over and over and over again. That's what I mean by details. I wanted to position it back to Neal Pionk and just say, you touched on it. But Ken, the amazing part for me is that he has such a bad game last game, and a lot of times defensemen will kind of have in their head, I'm off to a hot start, right? Maybe I was getting a little bit loose. Maybe I'm pushing a little bit too much for offense, and it cost me defensively. So I'm just going to go have a really quiet game tonight. That wasn't Neal Pionk. Neal Pionk was going to go out and he was going to be loud. Yeah, he takes a penalty that ends up with the puck in the back of the Winnipeg Jets net. But even after that, he just keeps going. It's what I like about Neal Pionk's game right now is he's just not going to be held down. He's got an idea of what he wants to do. He's not indecisive about it. He's not letting bad performances or things not going well stop him from getting to be the kind of player he wants to be. He is just realizing what he needs to do, and he's going after it. He's going after it even after a game where going after it may have cost him. Didn't cost him here tonight. And I just have to say, the overall overarching idea of the Winnipeg Jets defense leading the NHL in scoring, you don't do that without great teamwork. And hey, we wanted to give a quick shout out to the team at Cambrian Credit Union from answering members' calls in less than 1 minute to having all of their advisors available by video from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It makes it easy to be a Cambrian member. It's obvious the whole team at Cambrian cares about giving you great service, and that's what Kenny and Renny get when we go to Cambrian Credit Union, where we are both members, not clients. We are both members. Ken,
sorry, just one quick one. Tying up a bow, I shortchanged Pionk. 45 points in his first season with the Jets. So the 30s, he was consistently in the 30s after that, but 45 that first year when he ran the first power play. So looking very reminiscent of that first year here. And as mentioned, we've talked about this before, and I don't want to dig into it, but Neal's in a great place. Had their first child this summer, was able to kind of reset after going through a terrible tragedy, and he is his harshest critic. And nobody felt worse than him after the game on Monday. And what he did was come to the rink with a good attitude and got ready to go. And he delivered an impressive game. So again, 10-game block. I would say that he did a very nice job for the majority of those 10 games. I would say 7 or 8 of them for sure. So now again, long season, but he's off to a great start on that front for sure.
I want to thank Greg Johnson for understanding the foresight that goes into this move here, and me sitting there packing my bag and being like, I wonder if someone will call for the headband, and making sure that it's along for the trip just because of it. Ken, before we go on, I want you to give Sweet Lou a shout out.
Sure. For folks who have realty needs they'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including our podcast. And Lou's Mighty Bisons. Big playoff game coming up on Saturday, I believe. So should be an interesting one for the Bison football team.
There you go. Okay, let's move to 5-on-5.
Sure.
What did you take away from this game as far as your belief that maybe message received by the Jets? Okay, so this is something that Neal Pionk talked about specifically and brought up unprompted from me in the post-game interview that I did with him on Wednesday Night Hockey. I'd asked him about their bounce back, the importance of their bounce back. Yeah, GIF guy says Villiers skating non-contact. That's
back home, not on the road.
We should maybe touch on that, say something nice about Ville Heinola before this is over. But Neal Pionk, what unprompted, when I asked him about the importance of bouncing back after winning 8 straight and then losing one, the one thing that he pointed to was, well, more than anything was getting our 5-on-5 game right. What did you see from this team, Ken, as far as the challenge that they rose to? Their coach asked for better 5-on-5 play. They clearly got it on this night. But B, what did you see as far as sustainability from, let's start just specifically with the top line, sustainability that they can continue to be a dominant 5-on-5 line the way that they were on this night?
Well, I mean, again, I'm not sure if any of the three or all of the three were watching Scott O'Neill's vehement defense of them in the post game the other night after the game on Monday when he was asked about them. But what I do know is that those guys know that they can't be rolling with 9 goals against and 2 goals for at 5-on-5 for the season, Sean. These are smart guys. They know when it's going well and they know when it's not going as well. And, even though we know they're not a high volume team and they will often be outchanced, if your top line is getting outscored 9-2, the rope or the leash is not going to be nearly as long as you might think it is going to be. So those guys did it. They looked like they were on a mission, quite frankly. And knowing that, I don't know what was said behind closed doors, but I wouldn't be surprised if Scott O'Neill said, if you guys want to stay together, I need more from you. I mean, I don't know that he would like to say that publicly, but that would be my expectation of the situation. I mean, we know that Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele love playing together. And I said this on Monday. Kyle Connor doesn't deserve a demotion. He's probably been the best Jets forward on a whole this season. So if they were looking to mix things up on the top line, it would be Ehlers maybe getting a bump up there. But look up after today, and Gabriel Vilardi got himself going the way that we were expecting him to come out of the gate. So even Scott O'Neill referenced it, Sean, right? I mean, he said himself, Gabe was pressing, and now he's got himself kind of looking more like usual. And when all 3 guys are rolling, then that line can be a dangerous line, but they need to spend the majority of their time in the offensive zone, and that's what they did tonight. But again, bigger picture, Jets went into the game, Sean, outscored at 5, even with an 8-1 record, the one area which was their bread and butter last year, absolute bread and butter, the reason they led the league in goals against, were that they were a dominant, not above average, not very good, not great. They were a dominant team at 5-on-5 last year, and that had not been the case this year. Outscored 19-17, and yes, remember, it is still a small sample size, relatively speaking. But today, they were committed to defending first and foremost, and they also went on the attack. And when they went on the attack, they made the Red Wings look bad. And Sean, as you mentioned, this wasn't Kyle Connor blowing by some 6th or 7th defenseman. This was Kyle Connor going past the Red Wings' best player in Moritz Seider to get to the backdoor tap, right? I mean,
it's a bit of a bad play by Seider, if we're being honest here. He is their best player. He's their best. It was
a bad read by him. He got blown by.
Terrible read. Yeah.
Anyways.
It was. I mean, I will say this, and again, I'm not trying to take anything away from the Winnipeg Jets. The last 2 goals they score, that's bad goaltending there. The Nino Niederreiter goal is a fortuitous goal, to say it the least. It was some poor defensive play. But here's the one thing I'll say before I don't want to go too deep, because I think you covered off the 5-on-5.
I got one more quick one, though.
Okay,
just one last one. High danger. High dangers today at 5-on-5 were 12-3 for the Jets. So that means they were committed defensively, but also dominant the way that they had been at times for a good chunk of last year. So to me, that was the more impressive part. Whatever level of competition or poor defending all aside, that's the way you have to play. And again, it's not going to be that decisive every night, but it needs to be, similar to that if they want to, get back to where they were last year.
The one thing I wanted to say about 5-on-5, I think you've covered it off well. I'm beyond the point of thinking it's a fluke, and I get it. I know a lot of people talk about, in the end, if this team is getting outchanced, it's usually going to come back and balance itself out. I'm beyond thinking anything other than the idea that when you've got the likes of Kyle Connor and Mark Scheifele on the ice, that regardless of whether they're outchanced, I still like you outchance them 3-1. I still think for the most part that they're going to score on that one goal or on that one opportunity. And you saw it tonight, Ken, right? Like to start the game, one of the first things that happens is that line with JT Compher, Patrick Kane, and Andrew Kopp get a couple really good opportunities. And Andrew Kopp gets an opportunity, puts it off the outside of the post, right? They start the game with two really good chances, and then the Jets go down the ice, and on their first chance, it's in the back of the net. And then they go down the ice, and on their second chance, it's in the back of the net. And I would just say it like this: it doesn't take a lot, and that I think that's something that has to be factored into the equation. Now, I'm not saying that there shouldn't be efforts made to try and make the Jets top line analytically a better line at 5-on-5. Tonight is what they should be striving for. This is the blueprint that they should be striving for. But I'll just say this time and time again. This is not me saying it should be this way. This is me giving an explanation of why I think coaches over the years have been reticent to break up a line that a lot of people have asked to break up. If you know that line is going to get a few opportunities here and there, and those opportunities are going to be game-breaking plays that those guys just seem to convert at a higher rate than almost everybody else, then you're going to have the patience for those guys, especially when you know you can throw out a third line that you know is going to win the 5-on-5 battle, and another line in the fourth line that's probably going to win the 5-on-5 battle, and a second line that does pretty good at it. So to me, it's just more of an explanation of why we're seeing what we're seeing. But I also think what you're seeing, all the folks out there who've been upset about that, what you're seeing is a coach that called out his team, that made it clear he wasn't okay with the 5-on-5 where it is, a coach that wants this team to get better and is trying to guide them to being better. And I'm interested to see where Neal is able to guide that line as long as it stays together, and see if, like tonight, he can get better performance from them 5-on-5 with the underlying numbers, but still keep what makes that line the most dangerous, Ken, is that when they get an opportunity, it's in the back of the net, period.
Yeah, and that's what Kyle Connor was saying the other day. You don't need volume. You don't need to be peppering people from outside the home plate area if your goals are coming from backdoor taps or slippery backhands when you go past the goaltender, right? So,
yeah.
But again, they need to be better. Tonight they were better. Now they got to stack some games like that. I mean, this is not breaking news. We know, and we've said this ourselves. If those guys want to be together when it matters, they need to outscore their opponents. Break even is the starting point, but the job of a top line is to outscore their opponents, not just even out for the mistakes that are made in the defensive zone. So it was an important step for them for sure. And, we'll see how they go moving forward. It's a big test. Again, this sounds odd to say, but Columbus playing hard, we'll see. I would expect it to be a good game. The Jets have had a couple of tougher efforts in that building from what I recall in the last couple of years. So I think they'll be pretty hungry to get in there and face a former teammate in Sean Monahan. But quickly, what did you think of the rink? It's one of the nicest rinks in the league for me.
Yeah, really nice. It's it's almost like they turned it into a rink and a mall, but not a mall. Because a mall, there's something about a mall that's cheesy, but they basically built a block of really neat buildings around it, closed off the roof so that it feels like that you're kind of out walking in the street, but one of those streets that is like closed down, that are so walkable and so nice, kind of like Corden Avenue and places like that, without the kind of like Italian ethnic feel to it. But you don't feel like you're walking in a concourse. You feel like you left the building and you're kind of walking on one of those really neat streets, a lot of different cool shops to check out when you're there. And then you get into the building, and the building's amazing on top of it. So it's funny because I was working with some of the folks there who were like, "We don't recognize you. We haven't seen you before." And I was like, "It's my first time ever in Detroit." It seems so strange, but for whatever reason, it's always been a TSN game ever since. We've done Detroit games in Winnipeg, but it's been a TSN game every time the Jets go to Detroit for a long time. It was nice to be able to tell that story about Connor Hellebuyck because I knew that he was going to get out fishing. And it's funny because the Jets landed fairly late yesterday, and he still managed to get his way out. And I like that line. If anyone saw it at the beginning of the show, Connor Hellebuyck got what I didn't get to say is Connor Hellebuyck went out fishing. His brother didn't like where they were fishing and decided to cut away and go fishing on a different lake. And Hellebuck's brother slayed them yesterday. Connor went out with a good buddy of his and they got a couple nibbles, but they didn't get anything. They were shut out. And the line that I used on the show was, well, now Connor knows how he makes half the players in this league feel on most nights. But I just thought that was kind of hilarious. As serious as Connor takes goaltending, as serious, he's a serious cat the way he approaches things. His brother was like, hey, I know you're back and I don't get to see you that often, but I'm going to this other lake because I think I'll have a better chance. And he was right. So good for him. He's just as focused. And that's why you get success when you got focus like that. Ken, I wanted to bring this up quickly here.
Sure.
Pulled off a stat in the show, which I thought was crazy. Brought it to Gabe Vilardi before the game. I didn't pull it off. Dave Kazuska, who we call Kazoo on our beer league hockey team, the poor Bakers approached the group with a stat, and I told him I was going to steal it and I was going to put it on the show. I joked that I wouldn't give him credit. I did, if you heard me, but he found out that the record with Gabe Vilardi playing for the Winnipeg Jets is like, they've got like a 787 point percentage or something ridiculous like that with him in the lineup, and without him they've got like a 0.569. That is a massive chasm between those two numbers. I think there needs to be an exploration of what it is that Gabe Vilardi brings to the table that has created this situation. I'll also say this: games he scores, I think we had it out there, they're like 17 and I forget what it is, but when he scores, the Jets are like borderline unbeatable, tonight being one of those nights.
Yeah, I mean, it just he's one of those intangibles kind of people, and you can tell that he's a laid back kind of person, but he is a laid back person that cares a lot, and that's why I mentioned earlier. Like, you could tell that he was disgruntled by how some of the things were going in terms of not producing as much offense. And Gabe's the kind of guy that he knows that he's being leaned on. He knows. I mean, in LA, he was more of a third line player. He knows this is a humongous opportunity to become a first line player. Sean, we've seen this since the Jets 2.0 era began. Blake Wheeler, coming from Boston, was mostly a third line player. Andrew Ladd, right, on the Stanley Cup champion Blackhawks, was more of a third line player. When you go to a place and you are given an opportunity and earn an opportunity to play in a top line role, you want to be available and you want to produce, right? So,
yeah.
When he wasn't producing, good on him for being healthy for the first 10 games, but he also wants to be a productive player and be healthy. And I thought that, he's really started to settle in. And, when he's confident, he's extremely dangerous on the power play. His passing ability, we know, is really impressive. He has got great hands around the net. He said it to me at the start of the year. He wants to do a better job of scoring from distance. That really hasn't happened a ton yet. But that, backdoor offside, play from Kyle Connor on the first goal was that's a goal. That's a sniper's goal. Gary Galley said it. You don't need to cradle it. You one-time it and beat the goaltender. Like that. That's an impressive goal. I think that he's the kind of guy that, again, I said it in the preseason, and even with the slow start, I wasn't backing off of my prediction. I still think he's 35 to 35 plus this year, even though it, wasn't extremely smooth out of the gate in terms of finding the back of the net. But he also does the little things, wins board battles. He's a conscientious defensive player. He's played center before. He knows where to go in the defensive zone, really good along the boards. And he's the kind of guy that, makes guys around him better.
We got to go. Sorry. It's the first time I've ever given him the
no problem
up symbol there. Hey,
I'll say
this. Someone brought this up. I just want to touch on this quickly, Ken. In analytics we trust, as Renny, do you like the competition from Amazon? I would like talking about this. I've got good friends who work on that broadcast. Mm-hmm. Marco, who does the producing on that, great friend of mine, does a great job with that. I like what they're doing. I like that they're trying to bring something new and fresh. My company sold the rights to Monday, so I'm not going to get up in arms about it. There's another entity coming in there. I'm not going to be mad at them for for getting in there, just as like I can't be mad at my company for wanting to sell the rights. If you've noticed on this show, I've never shied away. Listen, this industry, I think, can be very protectionist. I always thought it was ridiculous that people in this business would talk around other people, everyone that we knew who they were talking about, like they didn't exist. If you'll notice on this show, I've never had an issue with talking about Sarah Orleski, a good friend of mine. I absolutely love Sarah. It's something that I've talked about. I admire her work. I think she's great. Johnny Lewis, another guy that I absolutely love. We get together, we go out and have dinners together and stuff like that. He's TSN, the competition. I think it's ridiculous when you do this thing where you like act like you can't talk about those other people. So I've always tried in this space to kind of bring in these conversations, have these conversations about the TSN folks, the Prime folks. The way I see it and the way I've always seen this industry is we're all out here doing the best we can, and that's what we should be doing. And competition is a good thing because it drives us to be better. And when we are better, you at home win. And that's what it should be about. It should be about all of us striving to be the best that we can. And that's what I try to do. And I'm sure that's what they're doing. I know that's what they're doing at Prime. I know that's what they're doing at TSN. We should all be raising our game to make sure that you, our customer, are served best as they possibly can be. Ken, we're going to have to roll quickly on this. What's your Johnson Group got you covered play of the game?
Yeah, I think we talked about Dylan Sandberg and the need to be better today, and he was better. And I thought his ability to lay out on the 2-on-1 rush and to just be really patient and outweight Jonathan Berggren as he tried to he broke up the pass on that 2-on-1 rush. That's my Johnson Group play of the game. We've got you covered special.
Here's what I love about this. Ken, I think we've defined the Johnston Group got you covered play of the game really well. It's usually an important play. I love doing games. I'm talking about like people bringing their best. I love doing games with Gary Galley. He picked up on that right away. You'll notice, Ken, and that if you're watching games with Gary, these are the kind of plays that will end up being played again in our show. You saw that happen with Sandberg. Gary Galley pointed out, just talked about the perfect timing of him laying out and just not really giving the passer an option on that play. Great pick, Ken, for the Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Ken, that brings us to the TCB lamplighter of the game. What you got?
Yeah, for me, it's the Kyle Connors setup for point number 500. We know that he went to 502, and all plays were very impressive, including his good hands award on the goal. But to me, it was the setup to Vilardi in his own building, in his home state, in a building that he loves to play in. I thought that his ability to set up and get the 500 club point out of the way, 2:48 into the game. That to me was that's my lamplighter anyway.
I'll give it that one as well. Hey, it's 500 goals. Sorry, excuse me. It's 500 points. I'll give it to it just because I thought that this was the setting the tone of the game, right? Like the Jets came out and right off the bat, this is how they were going to play that night. And the line that probably most needed to respond to the challenge given by their head coach is the line that responds. And it comes from the guy on the line, Ken, who probably has had the hardest time getting going so far this year. So I agree with you. That's my TCB lamplighter of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though. Matters what you think. Share with us your lamplighter of the game. Hashtag TCB lamplighter. You're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of lamplighter ale brought to you by our friends at Trans-Canada Brewing Company. You got one day, folks, tomorrow to go out and get $2 off a pack of lamplighter amber ale, and you do that and you will be given a roll of lamplighter tape as well. All you got to do is head on down to the tap room at 11290 Kenniston. Go to Trans-Canada Brewing Company. Great pizza, great food. Don't cheat yourself. Experience it all when you're down there and get a whole bunch of different beers because they're all the nectar of the gods. And that brings us, Ken, to the keg save of the game. What do you got?
To me, it was a little bit of an odd one, and I tipped my hand to you earlier, but because it was just such a little bit of a bizarre play, I know we may disagree here, but the sort of Snow Angels Starfish special by Connor Hellebuyck, I know there was room up top, but it felt like he kind of forced him into doing something he wasn't comfortable with. So for me, Hellebuyck's laying out on Justin Hall is my choice, even though it just also too there just weren't a ton of great options. He just was not under. There wasn't a barrage of saves that you could pinpoint, but I'm going with that one just because it looked a little bit odd.
I forgot to announce
Winners, yep, good
the
job.
winner on that one. Good job. I'm just gonna say here, I'll go with yours only because I can't think of another one. I'll say this: I think that that's less like a great cerebral play by a goaltender and more just Hall. All he needed to do was float it to the top corner, and that's probably. And he's not. The thing is, Ken, he's not looking to do that. Like I think he's turning to make a pass.
I definitely thought he was trying to pass. Yeah.
It seemed odd. It seemed in a game like that, that's one of the breaks that they're waiting for, and the guy like gifted the puck to the goaltender who was laid out. But listen, if you're Connor Hellebuyck and you give up on that play, then the guy definitely looks towards the net and puts it in the back of the net. Before we do go too far, a lamplighter winner is Carson Court Vriend 3092. You know what to do, Carson. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email, and I will have the folks at TCB send you the lamplighter. And I'm going to get this in before our Instagram ends. The keg winner is Mr. Ajax 711 at Mr. Ajax 711. You know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email, and I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. I'm not in the city of Winnipeg. I don't know why I just said that, but I do know that there are 3 kegs, each finer than the last in the city of Winnipeg. Ken, that's it for us.
Just a quick one. Just to be, you were in the building. Don Sweeney, general manager of the Canada's Four Nations Face-Off team, and Julian Brisebois, who is on the management team, in the building again. Definitely watching some Jets, right? I mean, definitely watching Josh Morrissey, definitely watching Mark Scheifele, and potentially even watching Adam Lowry for a potential shutdown role, right?
I honestly think that, like we talked about this, but Scheifele, I feel like it would be hard for them to look at him and not take him on the team. I think knowing what you've seen from him in the past, right? Like if you remember what he was like with Connor McDavid on Team North America, and like he would be intriguing to me because imagine putting Mark Scheifele on a line where he's the 3rd best guy on that line. Right? Like imagine what that line looks like when Mark Scheifele is like your 3rd most talented guy on that line. I think that that's the kind of scenario you get. And I just think a line like that is unstoppable because Mark Scheifele is really good at possessing the puck down low. It's hard to get it off him. He's really good at small area plays. He's got a good shot if he needs it. He can set people up. Like I think he would work well with a lot of other different players. And I've said this before, like, when I see guys like Elias Pettersson come in, I've said this time and time again, whenever I've seen Elias Pettersson come into Winnipeg, I always watch him play and I hear so much about how good he is. And I know that his numbers usually put him ahead of Scheifele, at least with the amount of points that he scores. But I don't know that I've ever seen a game other than the egg that the Jets laid after the trade deadline in Vancouver last year. I don't think I've seen a game where Pettersson was a better player than Mark Scheifele was, right? And that's saying a lot. Pettersson's going to be one of the best players on Team Sweden. So I think when he elevates, Mark Scheifele has the ability to hang with some of the best players in the league. And if you're going to put him riding shotgun alongside Connor McDavid or something like that, I think at this stage, the size, the speed that he has, the hockey smarts, the hands, the shot, the passing ability, the puck possessing ability, I just think that is too great a tool to leave off Team Canada. Ken, I'm calling it now. He's on the team, and so is Josh Morrissey. It's a done deal. I don't think Lowry makes it.
Yeah, and I mean that's fair. I mean, we'll see. It depends on what they're thinking, and even too, you could see maybe Lowry's a 13th forward too, right? That would be something where, face-off guy, penalty killer. Maybe they want to get him in at some point. But I've been wondering about this. I mean, I think that Morrissey, in my head, I think Morrissey and Pietrangelo is a potential pairing, and I mean, to me, that would be a really interesting pairing. I know that obviously Canada's got lots of options, and Makar and Taves is probably a pairing, but in my head, I think that Pietrangelo and Morrissey would really be an outstanding
great pairing, and maybe Team Canada's top pairing. Do you know what I mean?
In terms of
Like
shutdown work, right? I mean, they
it,
definitely would be getting
that's what I mean.
shutdown minutes for sure.
That's what I mean, because you can put those guys out there and they'd be geez, this is a show that we should probably do. We could do a show alone on the
Well, we got
talking
a
about
month
the
to sort it
Jets
out.
players and all the different kind of guys. I had a funny conversation with Paulie Edmonds earlier on today, where we were like having some funny conversations, and he joked, well, if there was if I had, let's say I had my own podcast, something along the lines of Kenny and Edmonds, and I said, you don't need to spend your time carrying that dead weight, Edmonds. Yeah, hey, listen, let me do that. But
That's
anyways, he talked about all the kind of different conversations that could be had. This would almost be worth its own little show, just that we could just, never mind talking specifically about Team Canada, we could just have a show on the Jets and where we think guys like Kyle Connor
We will have
gonna
a show.
end up on that. We will. Oh, you're saying that. Well, hey, listen,
That,
things are
you guaranteed
busy.
those guys are on the team. Well, I'm going to guarantee we're going to have a tee-up show for the Four
Right,
Nations
fine,
face-off. How about that?
Well, I was talking about a specific Jets and the Jets players and where they land on that. But regardless, that's that we got to shut her down here, Ken. I got a flight to catch tomorrow. Got to be home to hand out candy, and then I got to hop on a plane right back on Friday, heading to Ottawa, where you will see me doing our next show. When you see that show, you will see me at the end of it imploring you that if you do appreciate the conversations happening in these spaces, that you please appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in these spaces. For us, that's Vittorio Rossi, Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Furlan, Arctic Spas, the Johnston Group, TCB, TransCanada Brewing Company, for those who aren't familiar. Get with the program if you're not. And of course, the Keg. Thank you to all of them. Thank you to all of you for tuning in. Thanks for coming back, all you sucky boo-boos. I got something in for my boy Dave Kazuska. I got something in for my wife on this show. Thanks for coming back, sucky boo-boos, now that the Jets are back in the win column. And thank you, Ken, for rocking it, as you always do, anchoring this show and holding it down. I appreciate you, my man, as I appreciate everyone out there. We'll talk to you next time. Friday, when you can, I think we'll be right there. I will be in Ottawa. Talk to everyone then. Bye.